Greetings to all of you who are watching this video. This is the 8th in our series of English lessons, which are aimed at helping you to achieve a distinction in your final papers. And we're not just talking about paper 1 here. We have already addressed paper 3, and we shall look briefly at paper 2. But for tonight, English First Additional Language, paper 1. Now here on the board, you'll see I've got the paper from November 2015 that was written 2 years ago. I'm using this as a classic example of a paper. And what we are looking at in this particular video is aspects of language. Most specifically, we're going to be looking at direct and indirect speech, which comes up in every paper. We never have a paper without at least one question based on converting direct to indirect speech, or vice versa, where you are given the indirect speech and you've got to convert it into the direct form. And it's a complex subject which many people never manage to master when they are at school. So let's take a look at the language tasks in this paper. Okay, and they call this section Language and Editing Skills. Now, when you're talking about editing skills, basically you're saying spot the mistake. What makes this to be linguistically incorrect? When you see a paper of this nature, okay, the first thing that it says, read the passage, text F below, which has some deliberate errors, and answer the set questions. Well, answering the set questions is what you are determined to do anyway, I know. But let's take a look at this then. We'll read through the passage. I don't normally read through the passage, but possibly while we are doing this, you may even identify the deliberate language errors. Right. The amount of hidden sugar in processed food are slowly killing us. This is according to Fed Up, an American documentary which is narrated by award-winning journalist Katie Couric. This documentary compares the United States food industry to the tobacco industry and suggests that it preys on consumers. Take that up to the top. Academics and health experts argue that it is not only consumers' fault that they are overweight. Some blame has to be allocated to food producers and the easy access to addictive foods. Professor Robert Lustig of the University of California proposes that sugar is addictive, and most processed foods are full of it. Americans' actual sugar intake of 41 teaspoons a day far exceeds the recommended 5 teaspoons. Consumers do not realize that corn syrup, maltose, and dextrose are other names for sugar. Lustig blames refined and processed foods for heart attacks, obesity, strokes, cancers, and of course, diabetes. The film works to discredit the idea that one could just outrun a bad diet. It claims that food with sugar is still harmful for you, no matter how much you exercise. Okay, well, whether you agree with that or not is up to you. I think it's actually quite exaggerated. But whatever, let us look at the language aspect of this. Now here you see the first 4 questions identify the errors, spot the mistake, in other words. Okay, and it says to you, write down only the question numbers, and the words you have corrected. Right, first one. The amount of hidden sugar in processed food are slowly killing us. Well, that one is fairly obvious. The amount is singular, and it should go with is, not are. I'm sure you spotted that, right? Academics and health experts argue that it is not only consumers' fault that they are overweight. Now, that one's fairly confusing to me. Obviously, you've got to have some sort of apostrophe there. I would actually include also, it is not only the consumer's fault that they are overweight. But anyway, the sentence is still technically correct without that. But there, you're going to need a plural possessive apostrophe. And we'll look at the memorandum immediately after this. Some blame has to be allocated to food producers and the easy access to addictive foods. Right? Some blame has to be allocated to food producers and the easy access to addictive foods. Have you spotted the mistake there? I have deliberately mispronounced this. As it is written there, it would have to be pronounced allocated. In order to change it to allocated, you'd need to add an L at that spot. And fine, so there we've got a spelling error. And then, Lustig blames refined and processed foods for heart attacks, obesity, strokes, cancers, and, of course, diabetes. Did you spot the error yet? I'll read it again, and this time I'm not mispronouncing anything. Lustig blames refined and processed foods for heart attacks, obesity, strokes, cancers, and, of course, diabetes. There we are there. That particular version of the word coarse means rough or not very fine. Okay, so there we have a homophone error. The word is pronounced the same, but is spelt differently. Okay, let us then look at our memorandum, just to show you, there we are, how this is to be marked. I'll just take it down to the language section. Bear with me, please. There we are. And there we see, let's just take it up so we can all see it, is instead of are, consumers with the, excuse me for that, consumers with the possessive plural apostrophe. Please note it's in the, you're dealing here with a plural possessive. The apostrophe comes after the S. Allocated as opposed to allocated, an L has to be added. And then of course. Okay. You will see that instead of OA, it's OU. Okay. Let's go back to our language paper and see the other types of questions which we are investigating. Now, here we have a format question. Why is fed up written in italics? Now, everybody knows, I hope, that indicates that it is a title of a magazine or a publication of some sort. Now here, okay, we'll look at the memo for that a bit later, but not for now. What part of speech is the word American? Now, this is a great source of confusion. What part of speech? There's always confusion between parts of speech and figures of speech. We're going to look at that in some notes later. So, part of speech means a type of word, all right? So, what type of word is American? And the answer is that it is an adjective. Now, you can go one stage further, but it doesn't ask you to do that. It merely asks what part of speech is American. Why do we say it's American? Look, this is, according to Fed Up, an American documentary. Now, documentary is a noun. So that is a word being used to describe a noun. What type of documentary is it? It's an American documentary. But it has a capital letter. So if you want to be fully correct, then you would have to say it is a proper adjective, which it is. But the question doesn't ask that, it only asks what part of speech. So all you're going to do there is say adjective. Right. Study the following sentence. This documentary compares the United States food industry to the tobacco industry and suggests that it preys on consumers. Now, use a homophone for praise. Now, we already looked at in the previous question, what is a homophone? It is a word that sounds the same, but is spelt differently. Homophone means the same sound, all right? Just like you have a homonym, where the same word can be used for completely different meanings. But a homophone is a word with the same sound. Okay, so what is another way of writing praise? And, well, simple. You can take out the E and replace it with an A, and then you've got something that you do in a church. Okay, so how you do it is up to you, but it must show that you clearly know the meaning of praise spelt with an A. Okay. We'll go back to the memo and take a look at the memo. It's always good to look at the memo, believe me. Then, refer to the following sentence. Professor Robert Lustig of the University of California proposes that sugar is addictive and most processed foods are full of it. Right. Provide an antonym. Now, an antonym is a word with the opposite meaning. Provide an antonym for the word processed by using a prefix. What is a prefix? It is a letter or group of letters added to the front of the word. Okay, so how are we going to change processed into its antonym, its opposite form? Unprocessed, as easy as that. Just stick an on the front, or you can say non-processed, right? Then, here we go. Rewrite the following sentence in reported speech. In other words, indirect speech. He said, when I eat a bowl of cornflakes, it is like eating a bowl of sugar. Right, now we'll stop at that point. And now we are going to first look at the memorandum up to 5.1.5, and then we are going to go to a series of PowerPoint presentations to take a look at various language aspects that you are going to certainly encounter in an exam where this particular lot is covered. So, let me play this wonderful game with there we are. We're only going to look at the answers up to 1.5 and 5.1.2. It is remember it asked, why is it in italics? Title, name of a documentary or film or TV program. Fairly obvious. This one, the memorandum, asked only for the part of speech, and it's only given the part of speech, adjective. If you were to write proper adjective, it would be better, but it's not necessary. Right. Now here we come to our homophone. Spelt differently, but sounds the same and has a different meaning. You see that? The family prays every Sunday. Or the family prays every Sunday in church. You couldn't do it like that. Oh, there's another version of praise. Sorry, I overlooked that one. Praise. Okay? And now you're going to add a and I, and you change the last bit to SE. All right. My mistake. I should have concentrated on that one as well. But there are your two homophones, praise and praise. Isn't it amazing that they sound exactly the same, being spelt so differently? Right. And then here we were asked for an antonym for processed, and here they've used the most obvious one, unprocessed. But if I were to encounter the answer non-processed, I would accept that, because that's also using a prefix, although it would have to be hyphenated for it to be fully correct. Okay, right? And then we have here 5.1.5. He said that when he, please note the pronoun has changed, ate, the tense has changed, and was, the tense has changed. And then you notice this is a 4-mark question. Look at that mark allocation, 4 marks. That's a lot of marks for one question. It's the most marks that can be awarded for one question. And look at your memo instructions. 1 mark for each of the underlined changes. In other words, pronoun, tense, and tense. And 1 mark for removing comma, removing quotation marks, inserting the full stop, blah, 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 as well as the correct use of capital and small letters throughout. So, punctuation, 1 mark if it's correctly punctuated. But just before we go on, do you see here, inserting the final full stop. I would not regard that comma as an essential part of the answer. If you read it out loud, he said that when he ate a bowl of cornflakes, it was like eating a bowl of sugar. It is not necessary to put a comma there. It's not incorrect to put a comma there, but it is not, strictly speaking, it is not required. You can omit that comma completely, so you've got only that capital letter and that full stop as far as the punctuation is concerned, and you are fully and correctly punctuated. Okay, enough of this. Now, I'm going to see if I can find this here. Right. Here we have what I call English basics and terminology. And I'm going to run through quite a lot of this with you because it's important. First, and bear with me, here are the letters of the alphabet, those are vowels, okay? These are consonants. And it is always good to have a quick reminder of what vowels and consonants are. Vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and your consonants are all the other letters except the semivowel, which is Y. Please take note of that, all right? Then you have uppercase and lowercase letters, also known as capital letters and small letters. The terms can be used completely interchangeably. The only reason that you have the term uppercase is because of printers. In the old days, when typesetting was still done by hand, the thousands of little lead block capital letters were kept stored in the case above the table, further up, because they were less likely to be used. So that case was further away. The lower case was all the small letters, which weren't capitals. They were more commonly used, so that case was closer to the guy setting up this printing press. Okay, that's the origin of those words. Now we move on slightly to some useful definitions, which is what I've entitled this. Now, parts of speech. I want to stress this, types of words. Here are your parts of speech. The verb, you cannot have a sentence without a verb, so I start with that one. But please note also that this is a bulleted list. In other words, there's no order of priority. This is just my priority. Then you have the noun, obviously. It's your next most common part of speech. Well, not actually the next most common, but it's the one that you are most likely to find, without which a sentence cannot exist. Okay, adjective. I put it there because we've just had nouns, and an adjective describes a noun. Your adverb, okay, that comes next because an adverb, of course, qualifies a verb, or an adjective, or another adverb. Then, of course, your pronoun, which stands in place of a noun or another pronoun. You have conjunctions, your joining words. They used to join phrases and clauses and other words together. Prepositions, those little linking words used to clarify meaning in a sentence. And of course, your articles. The, a, an. There we are. Those are your only 3, well, 2.5 really, articles. Now, in order to clear up confusion, I've put this here. Figures of speech. Non-literal poetic language. And there you have some examples. Simile, metaphor, personification. You all know what they are. Litote, synecdoche, metonymy, pun, irony, sarcasm. There's quite a list. Right. Those are figures of speech. Never confuse figures of speech with parts of speech. It's a very common confusion in exams, and they do often ask parts of speech in exams. Now, here's just for interest, e.g., for example, it comes from the Latin exempli gratia. I want you to take note. If you write this down without the full stops, it's wrong. And possibly, we've seen they did ask you a punctuation question. Possibly, you're going to need to identify a mistake, for example, where they've left out full stops. Will it happen? I don't know. Etc. I've frequently seen this written lately, ECT instead of ETC. There you can see why it's ETC. And it, too, takes a full stop. Please take note of that. And then IE, ed-s, that is. Once again, lowercase, and it takes full stops. Otherwise, it's a spelling error. Please note that. Now, parts of speech, the definitions, I've given them to you, but we'll run through them again just to remind you of how to identify them. The one we saw being the adjective, of course. Well, let's take a look. A verb. That's a grade 2 definition, but it's still the correct definition. It's a doing word. A noun is a naming word. An adjective describes a noun. Now here, for the next one, we're going to get slightly complicated. An adverb qualifies, it does not describe. It qualifies, or you can also say modifies, a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. Now I want to show you something. And I'm going to have to switch across to this DocuCam for this. Give me a second here, please. There, I've put some papers down. Let me find this. There. I'm going to write on this piece of paper 3 words. These 3 words are homophones. Okay. Let's write. It's too high up. Let me just bring the paper down slightly. There we are. Good. I'm going to write in my own handwriting. 2 and 2. Be careful of these 3. This one is a preposition. This one is an adjective of number. And what is this one, which I have seen asked in an exam, that the part of speech must be identified? The answer is this is an adverb. It's an adverb. It's usually used to qualify an adjective. For example, it is too wet to play. Too wet. What's the wet? It's an adjective. Okay. Too wet to play. The ground is wet. Okay, so you got to be careful of that one. It is an adverb. This is, in actual fact, an adverb of degree, but we'll go into that another time. In the same way, the adverb very is, I think, an adverb of degree. But I looked this one up, and I took note of it, because I could see that it was going to cause a lot of complications for the candidates. Okay, back to our parts of speech. An adverb, therefore, qualifies a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. Let's move on to pronouns. A pronoun stands in place of a noun or another pronoun. Sometimes that can catch you out. For example, if I hit my thumb with a hammer, I cannot say, I hurt me. I have to say, I hurt myself. The reflexive pronoun has now replaced the personal pronoun. Okay. A conjunction is a joining word, and there I've put used for joining words, phrases, and clauses. Your most commonly used two conjunctions, and but. Enough said. Because is another very common one. Since, after, while, etc., etc. Now here we are, your prepositions. Linking words used to clarify meaning in a sentence. That's my own definition. I use that. I teach that in the classroom because the dictionary definitions of prepositions will drive you mad. They go for a confusing half a page in the dictionary, and at the end of reading that lot, you just look at it and go, huh? But what does that mean? Precisely. So your best way to identify prepositions is to merely learn them, read lots of lists of them, and make sure you know the correct preposition to use in things such as phrasal verbs, where if you change the preposition, you change the meaning. We may have a chance to look at that in a second. And then, of course, there's your articles. I'm not going to give you a definition because there are only three. Anyway, I'm not sure there is really a definition for that. The only thing to remember is you have the indefinite article, which is either a or an if it comes in front of a vowel sound. Please note I say vowel sound, not necessarily a vowel. And then, of course, you've got the, which is the definite article. Now, let's move on slightly. Context. Context. When you are dealing with parts of speech, confusion can arise, and here are some examples of it. Context is meaning according to position and surrounding elements. Haven't you heard the politicians when they were going to put their foot in their mouths as they normally do? Oh, no, but I was taken out of context. I didn't really mean to say that the guy was so horrible. I was misquoted, out of context, da-da-da-da-da. And I was taken out of context is a classic excuse that they use. But it's meaning according to position and surrounding elements. Now, here is an example. I like the taste of wine, clearly is a noun. It's even got an article in front of it. Articles always precede nouns or the adjective with a noun. But here, I like to taste wine. Now we have a form of verb. Okay, you could argue that it's a gerund or because it's being used as in place of a noun. But just take my word for it, taste can be either a noun or a verb. And you have to check what is its position in a sentence in order to understand this, according to position and surrounding elements. Here's another one. Okay, there we are, nice and romantic. I love my wife. Okay, now that's obviously a verb, that's the doing word in the sentence. But here, it's completely different. Here you have a possessive adjective before it, because it is now being used as a noun, an abstract noun for that matter. It is my love for my wife that keeps me so close to her. Okay, so once again, you've got to check according to the context. If you haven't checked your context, you might write down the wrong part of speech. Moving on. Here we have, now you notice that one of the exercises in that paper was to add a prefix. Okay? And so here we have root words, prefixes, and suffixes. Now we're starting off with our root word, happy, which is an adjective. All right, you know that. Now we'll change that to the negative form by adding a prefix, and now it's unhappy. Okay? And now we are going to make it into a noun, happiness. But we've done that by adding a suffix. And now we can also have an adverb. Look, it's happily. And once again, we've done that by adding a suffix. A different one now, but it's also a suffix. That's letter or group of letters that comes after, that's stuck onto the end of a word. Okay, now here are some helpful little hints. Most words ending with the suffix ly are adverbs. So if you're being asked to identify a part of speech and it ends with ly, check first to see if it is an adverb. The chances are it will be. Probability is over 90%, but it's not definite. You see, there are common exceptions to this rule. Friendly, lovely, stately, quite a few more. You must watch out for that. Those are adjectives. Okay, so ly usually indicates adverb, but not always. You have to check the position and the purpose of that word in the sentence as it is used in order to eliminate any confusion. Moving on to another set of PowerPoint slides. I am now going to do my button pushing trick again. And no. There, what have we got? There. Here are some notes. Let me just see if I can, there we go. Here is direct and indirect speech. And here we are looking at the theory and method of punctuating and converting one to the other. Okay. Now, here is the punctuation of direct speech. There are three different ways of doing it. It's when your introductory clause is in the beginning, or your introductory clause can come on the end, or it can come in the middle of the sentence if the sentence is complex enough to permit that. So please take a look at this. And there, the wonderful name Timothy. I wonder who I know who is named Timothy. But the name is actually a Greek name taken from the Bible, which means fear God. Okay, there you've learned something extra. Timothy said, I felt healthy yesterday, so I was able to donate blood. Now, look at this. Timothy said, comma, open inverted commas. Now, that has got to be a capital letter there. First, the first word of direct speech is always capitalized. I felt healthy yesterday. There's a comma here. There doesn't have to be a comma there, but it does sound better to my mind with a comma. So I was able to donate blood. Okay, full stop. It is not a question, and it is not a particularly emotional statement. So your full stop, as is the case with any punctuation attached to this sentence, it will come within the inverted commas. Please take note of that. The punctuation at the end of a sentence comes within the inverted commas. Okay? Then, now we get it at the end of the sentence. Open inverted commas, punctuation, in this case, a comma, because the sentence does not end at that point. The sentence ends over here. Please note the difference. Okay, and it's a comma. It is interesting to note that here you may have a comma, you may have an exclamation mark, you may have a question mark, but you may not have a full stop. That's interesting. Good. And then your third one, I felt healthy yesterday, comma, close quotation marks. Said Timothy, comma, open quotation marks. But in this case, the same sentence is continuing. So here it is lower case. Please take note of that. Right, then we get to the end of the sentence there, full stop within the inverted commas. Please, I want you to take note of this, the three methods. And I want you to take note of the details, just in case you are asked to punctuate a question, or in case you have to convert from indirect into direct speech. In other words, reported into direct speech. Okay, let's move on. Now you have to look at tenses. Sorry, let me go back to that previous page. Here you will see that the introductory verb is in the past tense. You see that? Said is the past tense of say. Unfortunately, if it is in the past tense, whatever verb has to be taken back by one tense still. If, for example, as it is here, it's already in the past tense, then it has to go back into past perfect. If it's in the present tense, it goes back into the past tense. Only if the introductory verb itself is in the past tense. Usually in exams, it is. Okay? So you're going to need to alter the tense. Let's move on slightly. So here are your tenses. The present tense, the past tense, the future tense, the perfect tense, the past perfect, and of course the future perfect. I have not included a separate present perfect tense. That can be very confusing. We'll look at that another time. Besides, it's not really important in this case. Now, here are those tenses in simple and continuous form. The simple form of the present tense, okay, the simple form of the past tense, the simple form of the future tense, the perfect form, the simple form of the perfect tense. I'm getting tongue-tied here, sorry about that. The simple form of the past perfect tense, and here we have the simple form of the future perfect tense. Now we go to the continuous form, and I've kindly put it right next door. The continuous form of the present tense, the continuous form of the past tense, the continuous form of the future tense, the continuous form of the perfect tense, the continuous form of the past perfect tense, and the continuous form of the future perfect tense. Okay, isn't English lovely and uncomplicated? No, it's not. It is complicated. And I'm leaving this on the board just for a second or two longer for those of you who are rushing out with a hand to hit the pause button, but now I'll continue. Now, this is how to change direct speech to indirect. But watch out, these are guidelines only. In many cases, these will not be applicable. Right, first, remove most of the punctuation. Well, that one, I have never encountered the change without removing most of the punctuation. So that one is pretty much a given fact. This one here, alter the pronouns. Yes, if there are any pronouns to alter, they will have to be altered. Insert a connecting word. No, not always. Sometimes it's unnecessary. Sometimes you don't even have to use the word that, and the meaning of the sentence will still be perfectly clear. And other times, for example, if you are reporting a question, the connecting word is sometimes built into the sentence already. Change the adverbs, yes, if there are any. Yesterday would, of course, become the previous day. Tomorrow will become the following day. Okay, so you must watch out for those two. Those are the two most common, by the way. Or last week would become something like the preceding week. And then change the tense, if necessary. Remember, only if the introductory verb is in the past tense do you change the tense. Otherwise, you leave the tense alone. Now, the boy asked, when was this made and how much does it cost? Let us now change this into indirect speech. But before we do that, let's look at what we are going to have to change. First, is it in the past tense? Yes, so we've got to change the tense. So definitely this here, was, will have to be changed, and does will have to be changed. But there is a specific way to do that as well. Do we have pronouns? Yes, we've got this, the demonstrative pronoun, and we've got it. Okay, the third person neuter pronoun. Right. Do we have any adverbs? No. Do we need to insert a connecting word? No, it is for us there already. Good. Let's look at our answer. First, all the punctuation has disappeared except for a capital letter in the beginning and a full stop at the end. That is the rule. It's almost always exactly like that. Sometimes you'll wind up with a comma in the middle, but in this case, it's not necessary. The boy asked when that had been made, okay? And then, and what it cost. So this does is done away with completely because it's covered with the rest of the sentence. All right. Just that simple. Let's go on and try another one. Timothy said, wow, where did we see this sentence before? I felt healthy yesterday, so I was able to donate blood. Right. Is it in the past tense? Yes. So, we're going to need to change the tenses. Now let's go through the rest, ignoring the punctuation. Are there pronouns? Yes. There's a pronoun I there, and there's a pronoun I there. And please note that it's written in the uppercase, capital letter. Good. Do we need a connecting word? It would be better with a connecting word, but it's not essential. When in doubt, though, include a connecting word. So we're going to use that in this case. Are we going to change the adverbs? Is there an adverb? Yes, there's yesterday, an adverb of time. So that's going to have to change. All right. And are we going to need to change the tense? Yes, because that is in the past tense. So we're going to have to move this or change this from, and it's already felt is already in the past tense. So that's going to have to go back into the past perfect. And was is in the past tense. So back into the past perfect. Let's take a look at our answer. Okay. Timothy said that, there's your connecting word. He replaces the pronoun. Had felt, tense. Healthy, the previous day instead of yesterday. Okay, that's your adverb. So he, there's another pronoun. Had been able, there's your tense change to donate blood. And please note, full stop, a capital letter, full stop, and that's the only punctuation remaining. Once again, that one follows the rule. Now, let us take a look at a number of examples of this. Bear with me while I find the one for which I'm searching. Okay, I think that's it. Yes, here we are. Here are the tasks. Now, the first one, for example, close the door, order the teacher. Now this one, the first thing we do is we check. Is it in the past tense? Yes, ordered. Okay, our introductory verb is definitely in the past tense. So, we've got to change the tense. Let's see if that's possible. But before we go on, are there any adverbs there? No. Are there any pronouns there? No. Is there anything else we need to note? No. Let's take a look. Here is one possible answer. The teacher ordered someone to close the door. There are many other possible answers there. You could say something that the teacher said that the door should be closed. Either way, there we've got then our introductory verb, but in this case, no introductory verb. All right? Not too confusing and wide range of possible answers there. You're not going to get something like this in an exam, by the way, because here there are too many possible answers in an exam, obviously they're going to give you something for which they can give you a specific mark for a specific change made. Okay. Now this one, however, is far more specific. Now this also relies on a moderate knowledge of Sesotho, because Palesa, you will have to know, is the name of a girl. It is a girl's name. I have never encountered any boys named Palesa. Yes, I've encountered both boys and girls named Larato. I've encountered both boys and girls named Impo or Dimpo, but only girls have I ever encountered with the name Palesa. Good, let's read through it. I did very well, said Palesa. Now the first thing, is that past tense? Yes, it is. So we're going to have to change the tense. Now let's go through here. Is there a pronoun? Yes, there's a pronoun. The pronoun is going to have to change. Is there a tense issue involved? Yes, there are no adverbs. So we're okay there. So let's see how this can be converted. Are you trying it out for yourself? You may do so. And now. Palesa said, now here we have that. Could you merely say, Palesa said she? Yes, you could. I prefer it though with that. Okay, Palesa said she. Please note, I becomes she, third person, had done very well. Okay, and the tense goes back into the past perfect tense. Good, let's try another one. We have time for a few more, but only a few more. James asked, have you got any salt? Now, once again, this one has multiple possible correct answers. For example, who is you? Are you going to put this into the first person? Are you going to put it into the third person? Either answer would be correct. Okay, let's take a look at this. Past tense, yes. Have you, pronoun, yes, that must change. Okay, got, yes, you'll have to change that into past tense. Okay, so we'll look at our answer. Here is a potential answer. James asked if the person had any salt. You see, had, please note. But looking at the pronoun, you becomes the person, because we have no clue as to whom that person is. Okay? And then got becomes had, if the person had any salt. And there we go. Once again, capital letter, full stop, and that's all that's left of the punctuation in that sentence. You could also say, James asked me if I had any salt. It would be perfectly correct. According to what is written there. So, if you encounter these things, make sure that you aren't scared to put down a correct answer, because sometimes there are multiple correct answers. Okay? Now please note here, that was painful, exclaimed the worker. So, the obvious one, well, first we check, is it in the past tense? Yes. What tense is that? That's also past tense. Okay. That, what is that? That's a pronoun. So we're going to have to work out now what to do to convert that into reported or indirect speech. Well, firstly, it's difficult to change that. It's risky. You can change it, but rather keep it the same way. The worker exclaimed that. What is that going to become? The experience had been painful. Right, there we are. I think we've done enough of these examples. Let's move on to converting indirect into direct speech. Bear with me while I scroll down. Okay. Right, here we go. Now, these ones, you've got to change into direct speech. And the opposite rules are going to apply. You check here. Is that past tense? Yes. In that case, you've got to look to change tenses. Is that a pronoun? Yes. You've got to change that pronoun. Okay? Is that a pronoun? Well, no, it's actually a possessive adjective, but that might change as well. Let's take a look at how we do this in direct speech, and into direct speech, I should say. Here. First, open inverted commas. Now, just a comment there. You could also say, Mr. Matopa said, and use that as your thing in the front, as your introductory clause. But in this case, I've just put it on the back. It's another way of doing it correctly. Right. Open inverted commas instead of he. Now we know it's a male speaking because it says Mr. So that's going to become, I want all your parents, I want, we change the tense, all your, because now he's putting it into the second person. He's addressing them directly. Your parents at the meeting, comma, close inverted commas, said Mr. Matopa, full stop. All right, let's try another one. Right, here we go. Now I want you to try this. So if you're serious about this, at any time here, hit the pause button and do it for yourself before I throw up the answer. And here comes the answer. The girl said that she had been frightened. Now here, well, we've got past tense and we've got a pronoun to change. So we're going to change it like this. Open inverted commas, I had been moves forward from the past perfect into the past, was frightened. Okay? Exclamation mark, exclaimed the girl. Now, I'm using a bit of poetic license here. In the indirect speech, it uses the word said. In the direct speech, I've put exclaimed. That might be taking a liberty there, but it might not be. Okay? Certainly, when you're dealing with being frightened, you are handling an emotion. So I think I can change that into exclaimed without altering the meaning. Let us do one or two more, and then I think we've covered our topic quite thoroughly. Okay, Zilla. I believe that's a famous politician somewhere in South Africa. Zilla announced that she had been shocked by Malema's statements. Now, if you want to do this for yourself, pause now. Good. There. Let me carry on then. Is it in the past tense? Yes. Announced, past tense. Is there a pronoun? Yes. Okay. Is there a tense to be changed? Yes. Had been is the past perfect tense. That's going to have to change. Had been shocked by Malema's statements. Okay, there's no adverbs or anything like that. So, let's now take a look at how this changes when it is put into direct speech. Okay, and there you see it. And again, I've put the introductory clause on the end. It can most certainly come on the front. Okay, I, pronoun, was shocked by Mr. Malema's statements, and I would say again, it's going to require an exclamation mark, because an exclamation mark indicates emotion, announced Zilla. Okay. People, I think we have done enough. I think we have covered now direct and indirect speech and many other aspects of language which you are likely to encounter in a paper 1. Some of this information, as I say, will also be useful to you in your paper 3. But specifically, in this lesson, we have looked at the language component that you are soon to be writing in your English First Additional Language paper 1. And it is my sincere belief that if you have paid attention to these hints and tips and practice exercises, you will move your marks up into the distinction range. Thank you for joining us, and I hope that you'll join us again for the next lesson also.